Well, good afternoon here from Savannah again, Savannah, Georgia. Another beautiful spring day, mid-80s. Sunshine. We're here at the Georgia Railroad Museum. Take a little peek in here. It's open on weekends. I've been here one time before. It's a neat, take you back in the history of steam locomotives and the old rail cars that were here in Georgia. It was part of the Georgia Railroad. They have a neat turntable here when a train comes in. It shows how a train gets turned around on a turntable. Central Georgia Railroad. Back in 1891, this area shows the Central Georgia facilities. It's known to be some of the oldest rail repair yards in America to this day. Most of the buildings here were constructed in the 1850s and 1920s when the Central Georgia was a major employer, economic force in the region. Then the move from steam to diesel shifted the work up to the railway's Macon complex, and it closed here in 1963. The complex is owned by the city of Savannah and Coastal Heritage Society. So it all began back here in 1833. Just take a little short walk here. See some of the old vintage cars and take you back into the day of railroading in the 1800s. Maybe we'll catch the train coming in on the turntable. Neat little museum to walk through. Trolley. Guess it was used here in the riverfront. It's a good bit of history here, though. Steam locomotives. Savannah and Atlanta. It's a neat operation when you get to see it, the turntable, how a train or engine gets turned around to when it comes in and hooks back up and goes back out. Just moves along and hooks up with the different rails. This turntable was made in 1907 and was relocated to Savannah from its shops in Columbus in 1923. It's the same turntable length configuration that exists till today, although it's powered by an electric motor. Let's see, old 223. Let's see when it was built. Built at the Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, 1907. Oh, I can just hear her now, chugging down the tracks. Just see like this being used maybe for a presidential car. Or some of the presidents back in the 1800s would use these kind of trains to campaign and travel across the country to meet the public. So you remember, this was one of the oldest railroad repair yards, and it still is being worked on back here. Last time I was here, people were working on the trains here in the shop area. In about 15 minutes, maybe the little sightseeing train will be back in and get to see how it does in operation of the turntable. We'll wait on it. And we're looking at again at the roundhouse. And again, this is just basically a garage terminal where locomotives are repaired and serviced. They are brought through the building through a turntable. This building was built 1852. The roundhouse had to be enlarged as steam locomotives became bigger. 1926, they expanded half of the building to accommodate larger engines, but then it became obsolete when the steam locomotives were replaced by diesels. Kind of how it would have looked back in the day. As we stroll back through the back of the shop area, we're looking at the Savannah Children's Museum. That's pretty cool. Right here in the backyard of the Railroad Museum. Backside of the roundhouse. Old stack. It's been here since the 1800s, mid 1800s. This here drop table is located in the roundhouse, and it's a device that enables mechanics to remove the axles and wheels of a locomotive and allows repairs to the wheel assembly and to otherwise inaccessible parts of the locomotive. The drop table. Old diesel just fired up. Getting ready to go on a little short sightseeing run. Central Georgia Railroad shops and terminals on the National Historic Landmark, so it's quite a significant landmark in the United States as far as history goes. This was done in 1976. How we doing? How long does the ride take?
20 minutes.
Okay, thank you. As the engineer says, a 20-minute ride. Museum graciously let me come on board. So 20-minute ride, we're gonna ride the turntable.
Right, so the museum we're in today is what remains of the first ever rail yard in the state of Georgia. It was built by the state's most successful railroad company to date, which was the Central of Georgia Railway. The Central of Georgia was founded in 1833 by city mayor William Washington Gordon. And if you don't know who that is perfectly okay. He is not the most famous person in his family. That honor instead goes to his granddaughter, the founder of the Girl Scouts, Juliet Gordon Lowe. And even before there was a rail yard here, this ground was important because, believe it or not, we're also on top of a Revolutionary War battlefield. On this ground, on October 9, 1779, at 5 o'clock in the morning, the second bloodiest battle in the war took place. The Battle of Savannah only lasted 55 minutes, and at battle's end, the conservative count of casualties stated that the combined American and French losses equaled around 800 men. We are rolling onto our turntable.
Pretty cool here is getting on board.
16 historic functioning turntables left in the country. This platform is 85 feet long, all powered by electricity, and has been here now for 103 years. The original turntable that was here in 1852 was 30 feet shorter than this one, and you had to spin it by hand. There was a pole on each end that men had to line up against it and push. Thankfully, the table was so well balanced that with a train on top, you only needed 2 men, one on each side, to spin it. Now this current table has 50 tons of train on it, and it's going to spin using 2 electric engines that are 7 horsepower each. Meaning, right now, at your local Home Depot, there is a lawnmower with more horsepower than what's going to spin us in just a moment. And once we start to spin, that's where things get a bit dangerous. Because if you look at the rim, there are no fasteners, hooks, locks, or latches to attach the rails we're on now to the rails outside. If the rails are out of position by less than an inch when we leave the table, there's a pretty good chance the train will jump off the rails and the tour will then have to end. The only thing stopping that from happening is Adam in our control booth. Now let me reassure you all, he is very good at his job. Adam is a master of an ancient, mysterious art called eyeballing it. He knows exactly where the rails should be at all times. With his over 1 year of experience, and my 3 years of doing these train rides, eyeballing it has not failed either one of us yet. Now, alongside being a museum, our staff repairs and restores train cars and railroad equipment, just like this place did for over 100 years. And one of our current projects is this silver train car right behind me. This is the 374, and it was here in the 1950s as part of, at that time, the fastest commercial train in America, the Nancy Hanks. The Nancy Hanks was a streamlined train that ran from Savannah to Atlanta in under 5 hours. That's faster than it takes you to get from here to there by car today, depending on traffic. And one of our engineers has been fixing that car inside and out for the last 22 months, getting it ready for public display. But that is one project in our smaller workshop. In in just a moment, when the rails are realigned, we're going to head down to the far end of our site and go into our paint shop to see where the rest of our work is done. Also built a retirement home for their aging employees, and that building still exists. It's now the admissions building for the Upland Island Wildlife Center on the way towards Tybee Island.
And now we've left the turntable. They're being turned around.
Now, once we round this grove of trees, we'll be able to see the paint shop in full. And that was one of the busiest spots on site. Its 50,000 square foot floor could hold 32 train cars at all times. And today the building is home to most of our projects, including 2 Australian trolleys, 9 train cars, a 1937 Model 15 Burro railroad crane, which our engineer Eric is trying to get back up to running capacity for the museum. You should actually be able to see it left post open doors once we get past this little patch of palm trees. And further inside, our engineer Eric also maintains our 2 vintage Fords, a 1926 Model T and 1929 Ford Model A. Now you notice there's a lot of parallel doors here, but only one line of track. Originally, right where the building reaches the track, there was a sliding platform called a transfer table that allowed you to slide a car to line up with all the doors so that you didn't have to make too many tight turns and risk the train toppling over. Now, as we enter this building, I'd like us all to imagine that we are here 100 years ago.
Going into the paint shop.
Dozens of people working this room, painting and removing paint on countless train cars entering and exiting this building at all hours every single day. They would use air-powered spray guns to put paint on and use acetylene blow torches to burn paint off. And everything that was going on in this room was half of what was going on in the building. Because there was also work going on down in the basement below us. The basement is just as big as this room. And down there, people would test diesel engines, make and mix paint, repair upholstery and electronics for the cars in service on this floor, and also print out paperwork and pamphlets for the rest of the site. This rail yard was almost entirely self-sufficient, and it was the largest rail repair facility in Savannah. On top of the company's own train cars, it wasn't uncommon to have other companies' railroad cars in here getting service at their rival's railroad shop instead of the city rail yard. With us on the tour right now, our engineer Eric is one of the men you see in that scene of the movie.
Lady and the Tramp, that came out a few years ago, was filmed partly here.
It's still not our oldest. Our oldest car is this one, right behind us. This is the number 2. Unfortunately, we don't know a lot about this car because there's very little written about it. We know it was a passenger car first, and then it was turned into an office car for railroad repair sites. We don't even know what year it was made in. We just know it was made sometime between 1878 and 1884. And we know that it was built somewhere. Thank you for laughing. 3,000 men marched through Georgia. Buildings were leveled, trains were blown up, and tracks were ripped out of the ground and twisted around trees. A railroad system that took 10 years to make was destroyed in 5 weeks. And surprisingly, this site was left untouched, and we have no idea why. And 100 years later, the site was almost gone. It was the introduction of the highway system. More people began to drive cars than ride around on trains. And in 1963, the Central of Georgia had to close its doors, and all of its properties and assets were purchased by their rival Southern Railway in a hostile takeover. After 3 years of doing nothing with this site, Southern Railway decided they should just tear it all down and sell the salvage. Finally, in 1972, the city stepped in and produced the original charter that gave this land to the railroad in 1833. In that contract, it states that if the land isn't being used as an active rail yard, the ownership of the land defaults back to the previous owner, which just so happened to be the city. Then, in 1976, the U.S. Department of the Interior designated this place a National Historic Landmark, the highest honor they can give a historic site. And now this place receives the same types of protections as places like the Statue of Liberty, Yosemite, and Yellowstone National Park. Now, of all the things Southern Rail was trying to make money off of in this place, what they were really after was this large, dark brick that you see here in the roundhouse. Well, a lot of buildings in the city are made of this material, and it's called Savannah Gray. It was only made here in Savannah. The iron-rich clay that it's made of has only been found within our waterways, and only one family that we are aware of has ever known the recipe for it. If you were to hold the Savannah Gray brick, you would first notice that they are bigger than bricks made today, and they are solid all the way through. But because they're porous like a sponge, they weigh less than a modern brick, but are stronger than them at the same time. This became the material of choice to make buildings out of after several fires in the 1800s. And fast forward to the 1960s when half the city was built with this brick. And if you needed more Savannah Gray to repair your building, well, you would have a hard time finding it because that family that knew the recipe had never written it down. And now the recipe is lost. A brick that was being sold dirt cheap in the 1800s was selling in the 1960s for $20 a brick. That's $200 in today's money. You can now see why half of our roundhouse is no longer with us today. And before Interstate 16 was finished, one of the main roads out of the city, or out of the port for the trucks, was down Lewis Hill Road and under a bridge that was 40 years older than the first automobile. For those big rigs to squeeze under the bridge, the drivers would have to hop out, deflate all their tires, and then reinflate them on the other side. As you can imagine, that would be frustrating. And if there's one thing the Port City fears, it's angry truck drivers, especially in the 60s and 70s, when their union was led by the infamous Jimmy Hoffa. Now, Jimmy Hoffa, by reputation, was a very dangerous and well-connected man, close friends in the Italian mafia. Now, coincidentally, for decades, Savannah was a favorite vacation spot and place of business for high-ranking Chicago mobsters, including Al Capone during Prohibition. So, for a few years before this place became an untouchable federal landmark, when the truck drivers very nicely asked the city for help with their little bridge problem, or else it'd be an awful shame if something were to happen, Savannah very quickly got rid of it for them. And now, because of that, the only way a train can get out of here now is in pieces on the back of an 18-wheeler truck. And if that's not irony, I don't know what is. But the irony continues, because that bridge down on the intersection is also from the 1850s, and that one's protected by the city. There are now signs and flashing lights down there warning truck drivers that the tunnel under it is about 18 inches shorter than their trucks. There are scratches inside that tunnel. All the trucks that got stuck in it over the years, as recently as 3 months ago. I know that because I was stuck behind that one that morning and it made me late for work. Thank you all once again for joining us here at the Georgia State Railroad Museum. Thank you all.
What a neat little tour. Definitely, if you're into rail history and locomotive history and buildings, definitely this is a spot to come visit. Well done. I learned a lot of history here on this little train ride that I really hadn't known about in Savannah. Al Capone, the mobsters, had used this as a resort area to come to back in their day. All right, well, it's a 20-minute ride on the train. You get to ride on the turntable, see how it's done. Learn a little bit of history about some of the oldest locomotive rail yards in America, or the largest and oldest. Takes you back in a little bit of history of our American locomotive and railroad system from here in Georgia. Great tour, great tour. Absolutely recommend it. All right, well, that's going to end it here for our ride. Hope you guys enjoyed the ride as much as I did. Well, that's going to wrap it up here for our visit here to the Georgia State Railroad Museum. Absolutely fascinating little tour. Great little 20-minute ride on the diesel train. A lot of history, a lot more than you realize. Again, looking at the largest, oldest railroad turntable maintenance yard here in America, still here. Thankfully, because it's on a landmark of National Register of Landmarks, or I'm sure be some condos or apartments here. A lot of history of the tour guide went into about Georgia itself and Savannah, how the role of the Battle of Savannah, second bloodiest battle for the Americans. So that's going to do it. So here at the Georgia State Railroad Museum when you're in Savannah. If you're into locomotives and trains and history, highly recommend coming here. Well done. That's going to wrap it up here. We're going to head back to the hotel, take a little break, head over to game tonight. See ya from the Georgia State Railroad Museum, Savannah, Georgia.